Hello and welcome to another Overlord lore video about what would happen if Ainz Ooal Gown, along with his guild, his NPCs, and all of the undead he had created with the aid of Pandora's Actor, would just disappear. And in this part, we will focus on the foreign policy. And in the next one, whether or not the theocracy would try to eradicate the Sorcerer Kingdom, now that it has lost the protection of Ainz Ooal Gown and the Great Tomb of Nezarec. But before we're going to take a closer look at any of this, let me quickly thank my Patreons for supporting this channel, as well as all users of the YouTube thanks function for making one-time donations. And with that said, let's start with the allies of the Sorcerer Kingdom. As mentioned before, thanks to Fluda Paradane controlling some undead, and Jerknuf taking political control over the Sorcerer Kingdom with Enri's backing, the undead labor would, after a few weeks, become once again available to the Dwarf Kingdom, and since its economy is weaker, and since it just came out of a devastating and long-lasting war against the Quagoa, they would still be dependent on this vital economic connection to the Sorcerer Kingdom, and also would still rely on their food. So in terms of foreign policy, the Dwarf Kingdom would firmly stand on the side of the Sorcerer Kingdom. And thanks to Nea's recent success, the Holy Kingdom is not only united behind her, but it would also be the strongest ally of the Sorcerer Kingdom in any way, shape or form. And while it still might be too weak to send significant economic or military support, it would nonetheless back the Sorcerer Kingdom and conduct trade and commerce with it, possibly preferential as a sort of a large single market and trading bloc. And quite likely they would also enter a defensive alliance with the Sorcerer Kingdom. Thus Jerknuf would have secured 2 nations and 2 borders of the Sorcerer Kingdom without much in the way of trouble. Furthermore, Nea's cult, that already had reached 10% of the Holy Kingdom's population at the end of Volume 13, and had dominated politics by the time the War of Annihilation against Rias Tais had happened, would also likely spread through the entire realm, unifying and greatly contributing to internal cohesion. For almost all citizens would have experienced a sharp decline in living standards, and would now remember the good and the awesome times that they had under Ainz, and thus pray to him and pray for his return. This unifying religious and cultural influence Nea could provide would also be needed in order to unite the different humanoids, demi-humans and heteromorph species behind a common cause, and bind them to the state by more than just violence, wealth or fear. So the Holy Kingdom would be an incredible boon. As for the Balian Hills, they would either be their own mini-nation or just an autonomous region within the Sorcerer Kingdom. After all, the more rebellious and dangerous tribals had already been dealt with, and since the demi-human region has also still to recover from the war with the Demon Emperor Yaldabaoth, it is highly unlikely that they would rebel or do anything stupid the next few decades or so, simply because they then would have a border with the Sorcerer Kingdom and with the still equally hostile theocracy. However, the Sorcerer Kingdom would have a lot more trouble with the Carnazo City-State Alliance, who looked at Jerknuf and his empire like Kazuma's teammate oftentimes look at him, like utter trash. Jerknuf, thanks to Ainz Ooal Gown's brilliant display of obliviousness, is now seen as a coward and a traitor to all life in most other non-aligned nations, and the City-State Alliance is one of those states that stood firm against Nezarec's influence, which is also the reason why Silver Canary, the adamantite-ranked adventurer team of the Empire, had relocated from it to the City-States, since they were also highly disappointed of the Empire, and to them, Jerknuf's decision was just deceit. But since the City-States also face a military threat coming from the east, and since they had to defend themselves against it, and since Carnazos is highly divided internally, with each city-state more or less out for themselves, rather than launching a unified military response against the immediate threat to the east, The states would not take any military action against the now weakened Sorcerer Kingdom, though I doubt that they would back them politically or that they would conduct much of the way in trade or commerce. But still, the Kanazo City-State Alliance would also not outright provoke and agitate the Sorcerer Kingdom as well, because after all, even 4 to 6 Imperial legions would still be a formidable fighting force, and with the return of Fluda Paradine into the fold, and likely Death Knight in tow, the Empire alone could easily defend its border with Karnasus, while Henry the Bloody would mount an offensive against a single city-state, if a war should ever happen. But the threat of her alone should keep them at bay, even if they are very, very vengeful now. However, there is a state that has an otherwise very secure border region and shares one direct border with the Sorcerer Kingdom, the Arkland Council State, home to the 5 Dragon Councillors, with Platinum Dragonlord among them. And this border is trouble for Jerknev, for almost the entire kingdom of Riestais is depopulated now, except the domain of Marquis Raven around Elibera, and that had been spared. But they alone would lack the military strength to defend the border, much less shack a Dragonlord, which should be in the 60s or 70s level-wise. So if Arkland would mount a major offensive, they could advance at least to Elibera without much in the way of resistance, before Henry's Goblin army and the Imperial legions, backed by Fluda Paradine, would arrive, but even then it would be a very, very hard-fought battle. However, with Ainz Ooal Gown and Sheltier gone, there is really no reason to fight a costly war against all the living, for remember, the very reason why Platinum intervened was to save the kingdom of Riestais from the undead, and because a great evil had stirred. Which was also the same reason that he had attacked Sheltier, but ultimately had to withdraw. So it is highly unlikely that Platinum or any other Dragon Councillor would do anything against the now Sorcerer Kingless Sorcerer Kingdom. And therefore he, like the other Dragon Councillors, would just turn their attention elsewhere, especially because Platinum's main power base and his influence is located well within the eastern part of the continent, and Arkland, which sits at the very western edge of it, is but one of his many projects, so while a potential war would be highly disadvantageous and would likely end in a major bloodshed, or the loss of a huge chunk of territory for the Sorcerer Kingdom, a proper war is unlikely to break out between the two nations, simply because Ainz is all gone. However, there still remains one nation that is, to put it mildly, way less pragmatic and far more zealous, a nation that had suffered a great loss at the hand of the Sorcerer King already, namely the loss of the Sunlight Scripture, and had witnessed the death of millions of humans. And this was a heavy blow to mankind, and thus to the theocracy, who still views itself as the protector of humanity. And how the state of the 6 great gods would react with Ainz finally gone, and the Sorcerer Kingdom now very, very vulnerable, will be the topic of the 3rd and final video. I hope you have enjoyed this little hypothetical scenario we now have explored. Please leave your comments and feedback down in the comment section, and as usual, I say my special thanks to Ada Daddy Ada, Bad Guy Ye, Bad Burrito 316, Beezer, Ben C, Brandon D, Chrissy, Crowley 0221, Sia, Crystal Prime, Dead Slime, Death is Mercy, Deathless Dragonlord, Demon Xenomorph 1987, Devin Downen, Ding Dong, Duckwagon, Dunkler Krieger, Dystopia, Dystopia II, Enigmatic Unicorn, Thiralshivan, Guy with That Head, Hector Marino, Hoss, Huster, Jacob G, Jana B, Jason, J. Morris, Chromius, Kyle R, Lee K. Long, Legendarius, Lelouch Britannia Vippe Mustache, Lexus Fox, Lord Nishikian Rai, Lord Touch Me, Love Razor, Merovec, Mr. Shoes, Mr. Tweaker, Michael R, Michael Y, Nope, Oh Hell No, Normal Toad, O'Kill, Overlord General Gasper, Paddy Pantom, Personage, Primus 11, Rhinomere, Cune Karakos P, Shergox is Daddy, Shadow Lightning Wolf, Shrine Keeper, Super Tier Magic Batista Bomb, Supreme Cheese, Staris, Ted, Texas Deer, The Orc Warboss, Rag Edsmasher, T.E. Wang, Vash Hawkeye, Vegito 27, Venture Fanatic, Wilhelm, Xenokai, and Zonagon. Thanks guys. Anyway, have a nice day, and I hope to see you again all under my next video.